All right, we're back. We're here to talk about this mystery Sith saber from Starfall. So this features an etched shroud that I provided Nick just on a whim a long time ago, so he kept it and used it on this particular saber. So I think this is part of a line of like commissions that have like it's not a mystery saber per se, but it does give Nick the license to do kind of what he wants, but it aligns it light side or dark side so that at least the customer has like a theme without paying for like the semi-custom mystery sabers. Don't quote me on that. I'm not an expert on Nick's processes, but the cool thing is this is very much like an original trilogy or maybe an extended universe style hilt. We've got like the faucet sink pommel, a cool little baffle, shroud. And the other nice thing about this particular sabers and some of the several of the ones that I've done recently is no tools required. So you've got a knurled thumb screw for your blade retention, and you've got a fully removable chassis, and you just pull the pommel off. So let's talk about the chassis and the install, and we'll cover a few blade styles, a few functions for how to operate the saber. This is a very simple setup, but there was plenty of room, so I did a couple cool things. So let's hop down to the table to talk about that. All right, so here we are, Mystery Sith. Again, just take a close-up look at that etch. Some of the cool features here. We do feature the Kessel Custom Sabers / Saberbay team up for these tactile switches. So per Nick's request, I used the aluminum housing with the copper actuator. So since this one's a little bit deeper set, when you look at it from a side view, this is the power. So when the blade retention's facing you, left is power, right is aux, and part of that's because that's a little bit easier to get to, and you're going to be using aux a bit more. Up top, we have the Shtok Eco NPXL V4. So this is just going to mimic what the blade does, but there's a bunch of extra 1515 neopixels there. And then how we get to everything is we just unscrew the pommel. So one thing you'll notice right off the bat with the chassis is I did try to incorporate some of the exterior features onto the interior features. So this sort of knurled grip finish and the Sith emblem are things that I carry over into the chassis design. And as we can see, very wide, I think this was like 31 millimeters of internal space. So I did a couple things to take advantage of that. Down in the bottom, you can see the Shtok rotary PCB set, the pogo side. And then here is the chassis. So I wanted to try knurling for a while, and this gave me the opportunity to do that. I also, given the space and the fact that there were no additional accent LEDs requested, decided to try with the FDM printing on a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, some larger greeblie work, and they came out pretty good. So I was pretty stoked on this. Again, talked about the Sith emblem and then the knurling, but one of the cool things is we've got removable battery cover, so that just keeps that in place. And kill switch, 28 millimeter bass speaker, onboard tactiles, Proffie V3, and so the tactiles correspond to the closest pad. So on Proffie V3.9, they flip-flop the button arrangement. So the right side is power and the left side is aux, which will be opposite of your saber when it's facing you. Left is power, right is aux. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, when we're ready, we can just, oh, and the other thing to note is on the battery cover, these magnets allow this to only go one way, but the cool thing is if you do put it the other way, you can sort of use it as a kickstand on your table if you're programming or something like that. You can do like that. But yeah, board only goes on one way. My battery wrap on this 18650 lithium ion rechargeable. Spring side's your negative towards the kill switch. Obviously the positive terminal's indicated there, so we just put that in any which way. Covered up, and then we can turn our battery on. I'm sorry, turn our kill switch on. So that's our boot sound. To cycle between the presets, we can hit aux.
Battery level.
So this is the very last preset. You won't see anything, obviously there's no accents on here, but what'll happen on the blade is you'll see a bubble strip, and towards the tip it'll be charged, and towards the emitter it'll be less charged. So move on. So now we're at the top of the preset list. This does have the Starfall font package, 11 presets, including that battery level preset, and we'll show those off here in a second. But yeah, all 3 of the newest sound fonts that he commissioned. Config is on the SD card. This one, because it's just a 1-blade setup, only takes up about 43%, but on there I've got a little template, so if you decide to learn how to program the Proffie in the future, you can save that to your computer, modify it, take the template out, paste your blade styles there. I've also included some of my blade styles using the FET263 library. So I've built in options, and you can get those options to engage or disengage with edit mode. I don't cover edit mode in this demo, but I'll have a printout that explains all of that. But the nice thing about it is you don't have to like add any space that on the config itself. You can just, if you want to do it on the Saber, instead of learning how to program, you can use edit mode, duplicate preset. So you start with one of the ones that you liked, and then you just change like the main blade color, maybe some of the clash colors or lightning block colors. And then you can turn a pre-on on or off. I think there's some post-offs, et cetera, et cetera. That will be in that config, so you'll have to read the like little commented out blurb at the top of the thing that comes from the FET263 library to understand which options there are. But there's also another blade style in there that's not even being used. It's an OT rotoscope, and that'll have different options than the Starfall options. So a lot of information, but like I said, don't cover it really here. But yeah, when we're ready, just pop that into the Saber. Put the pommel on. We do have gesture control, which will get us into battle mode, but if we don't want to do that, we can just hit the power. All right. So let's put a blade in it. This takes a 7/8 diameter blade, and it's programmed for a 36-inch length. If you get a shorter blade, you can go into the edit mode, edit settings, and then change the blade length. And then what you'll do is it'll have a white bubble, and then if you're not seeing it, you keep rotating, and it'll basically reduce the overall pixels by 1 each time you're hearing a click. And then the moment you see a white bubble, you can hit power to accept that as your blade length, and that will be the very last blade, and that'll be perfect for whatever blade you have. But this should be good to go out of the box. Even if you do get something a little bit shorter, like I said, this is 36, you get like a 32, some of the animations might be cropped, but they'll still show up. So just up to you what you want to do. All right, so like I said, to turn it on, we can hit the power, or if we want to, we can have twist on or thrust on, but let's do that. So now we're in battle mode, which means we don't have to press a button to engage lockup, but it also means if we do want to do like a light clash, we can just barely tap the Saber and we'll get a glancing blow, but when we really hit it, that's when we get our lockup until you pull out. Now, lockups are also melt effects, so when we're sideways, we'll do the melt, all right? When we're pointed down, we'll get the drag. And then, like I said, just pull out to disengage. If you'd like to be in a little bit more control, then obviously hit power and hold either aux or power and clash to get into the lockup. So you still have to be in the alignment, but you have to hold a button. So holding. So now, still in lockup till I let go of that button. Let's move it on to a different preset. So if we want to, we have force effect and quote player, and on some of the Starfall fonts there are quotes, some of them there aren't, but it's already turned on. So if you add fonts in the future, it's just ready to go. What you do is you point the hilt down and hold power for 2 seconds to flip-flop between quote player and force player. So it defaults in force player, and in that I have animated the blade depending on which preset you're on. It may go unstable, but it'll only play for as long as a sound effect goes. Generally, if you're in the FET263 library, it like defaults at like 30 seconds, which to me is a little too long when you're swinging it around. But So there was one of the force effects on this sound font. Now if I tilt the saber down,
Forces capable of wielding gravity, while the three remaining wielded dark energy.
so when Nick commissioned these, quotes came with them. And again, they're not for every font. It's just on a few of them. One of the other things that holding power for 2 seconds does is start and stop tracks. So when the saber's off, you can get into track player mode if you're in any orientation other than completely vertical. That will get the designated track, and I have assigned a specific soundtrack for each preset. So again, you can only get that pointing the hilt straight up. If the blade is already on, if you've ignited it and you're swinging it around, you can only access the designated track. And again, saber has to be pointed straight up. And you can turn it off. So if you start a track, then ignite the blade, then you have to turn it up to turn off the soundtrack. Otherwise, you turn the saber off. Hold power for 2 seconds. So let's demonstrate track player first. Hold for 2 seconds, power for 2 seconds. Get the chime. Now, as we rotate, we're going through the track list either in alphanumeric order, forward if you're going clockwise, backwards if you're counterclockwise. And then depending on which button you press and if you do a gesture, it'll either keep playing, like with power. So now I can keep rotating and it's gonna keep playing. And then just hold 2 seconds to turn it off. Now, that was me going through the track list with track player. If I hold it upright and hold power for 2 seconds, I'm gonna get the designated track. So that's this one, okay? And again, hold it for 2 seconds, any orientation to turn it off, right? So that's quote player, force player, track player, all right? And again, designated track if we're upright.
Hero's Journey.
When the saber's on, if you want to do a quick color change on the fly, hold aux and tap power. You're going to get into the color wheel and it will rotate individual colors. I've also provided the Proffie OS voice pack to guide you through either edit mode or through these. So if there was a character that Brian Connor had done and I knew who Nick kind of intended the sound font to be about, I've put that character. So for instance, I think this should be Luke.
Red.
Yeah.
Orange, red.
So you're hearing
orange.
Luke announce the color. If you like that color,
Orange, gold, yellow,
press
green,
power.
yellow, green.
I designate these specifically, so I'm just going to hit aux to revert.
Revert.
So you'll hear him say that. With regard to the voice pack, if you're in the off state and you hold aux and tap power,
Battery level, 83%.
you'll get a percentage announcement from the voice pack. There is a default voice pack for this that is a Sith. I think it's the Darth Bane, because that was one of the newer ones I downloaded and it sounded kind of spooky. If we hold power and tap aux, we'll get into the volume level.
Enter volume menu. Maximum volume.
And with this fully enclosed 28mm, we've got plenty of juice. So I've backed it off a couple ticks.
Exit volume menu.
Hold power or aux to get out of and it'll accept that. So yeah, so that's the voice pack. So let's see, let's go to a different preset.
Reconcile. Legacy.
Actually, let's go to Cornhorn. If you point the hilt down while you're tapping aux, you'll go backwards in the presets. So this should be a default Proffie voice pack.
Battery level, 85%.
One other thing to note with regard to color change, on this preset only, Cornhorn, it does not do color change, it does color change direct. So this will flip-flop between a white main color and a light purple aux color. And that just has to do with the lore of the saber for Cornhorn. So hopefully you can tell that's a light purple. And you can see it wipe up. You'll hear that little chime as well. Every other one you can change it. And if you wanted to get specific in the colors, like I said, you can jump into edit mode. There's only one blade, so you'll just jump right into the edit blade settings, edit colors, and then you can change the ignition color, which, you know, depending on which preset you're on, might do something. Blast, lock, clash, melt, you can change all those colors. Probably unnecessary, but the function is there if you want it.
Legacy.
So we're now towards the end of the presets. One thing to note, if you use gesture control to turn the Saber on, you're gonna bypass any preons. The last 3 fonts that Nick commissioned all have preons. The only way to get it is to hit the power. The only other font from the older fonts is Ruin that has a preon. So again, it's just a quick little like emitter or animation, and then the ignition will happen. Whereas if you use a gesture control, just the ignition happens. So let's demonstrate that real quick. This one was really quick. Let's see if we can get a different version of that. Yeah, there we go. It's sound related, so depending on what the sound does and the volume of that sound, the animation may be more or less erratic. Just on these last 2. On Ruin, it's very specific.
Lights.
So for instance, it only hit that one little flash, but yeah, got. One thing I didn't mention is lightning block. When the Saber's on, hold power, tap aux, and keep holding power for as long as you want that lockup to happen. So let's actually go to the last one. Easier to see in red, so let's do that one. All right, so hold power, tap aux for lightning block. So that's most of the functions. And like I said, last preset.
Battery level.
Battery level, you see the bubble. If it's all the way at the tip, you're almost fully charged. And then as this depletes, it will change from blue to green to yellow to orange down to red. You'll probably start to hear artifacts of the sound when the battery's really low. It's nothing to be worried about. It'll be like speaker crackle or slow or weird glitchy sounds. Again, nothing's wrong with the Saber, you just need to charge. And if you're unsure, you can always do the battery level on any preset by holding aux and tapping power.
Battery level 78%.
So plenty of charge on this particular one.
Starfall.
And that's pretty much it. So when we're ready, we will take the pommel out again. And the nice thing is I've located the kill switch right here so you don't have to pull the whole thing out. But let's go ahead and pull that out just again to show off some of the chassis features. So here's the kill switch. Also on the Proffie, there is a status indicator LED. So if you're unsure if the Saber's on or off, you can either tap a button. So you get that boot sound. Here, I'll turn this light off real quick. See it? It's a very subtle green light right there. And you'll see that. I do have this set to time out after 5 minutes. So if you just set this down, gestures won't work after 5 minutes and it'll act like it's not on. You will see the status indicator light, so the battery will slowly deplete over time. It's not gonna draw much current, but it can. You need to wake it up with one of the buttons, and so then you'll hear a boot sound or something to that effect when it comes out of sleep. But that's pretty much it. So show off a couple more of the greeblies. Like I said, this was FDM printed. Got these really super strong magnets. Again, power on the right, aux on the left. And then again, config on the SD card. I've only programmed the Starfall sound fonts, but my Proffie that I order came with a bunch of sound fonts, so I've included those on the card. If you want to access them, you'll need edit mode. And again, I don't cover that here, but I'll have a printout from the FET263 prop file that covers all of the functions. And then there will be a link to his website for more information. I highly recommend, if you're going to be interested in programming it yourself, you go there, read all the pages he has on how to do that, those procedures, whether it's adding fonts, editing blade styles, or those things. Tons of years worth of video footage to cover all of those things. It's a little verbose, just like me, but you'll find what you're looking for. And if after you do your own research, there's a question you have that you can't figure out, then feel free to email me. And that's just to the customer. So to everyone else, thanks for checking this video out, and may the force be with you.